issue is the NCOP is reconvening again at 2. So, but try to see if you can get, I'm also trying to get out of the members. I think they're still locked in on the NCOP sitting.
Chairperson,
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Chairperson. I also am on the plenary because I have a speech as well. And I wouldn't have liked to have missed this half either. So I'm going to try and keep the one on my phone and then just monitor when I need to give my speech then later on.
Okay. I can't understand why this meeting was approved long time ago. I didn't know that we will have a sitting this afternoon. But let's see if we can get the members. It's fine, member Christians. I'm also trying to get hold of the other members.
Well,
Good afternoon, members and the platform staff and the department. Can you allow us about 10 minutes? I'm just sorting this issue out with the chief whip and the chairperson, the chair of chairs of the NCOP, because there is some confusion with the program. We are in plenary and this meeting was approved also a long time ago. I will come back to you in about 10 minutes time on the way forward. Thank you. Marcel, how many members do we have on the platform?
Chair, we have 4 members. We need 1 more member.
So it's myself.
Ms. Christian, Ms. Nchabaleng, and Ms. Lahihi.
And Ms. Christians is also doing, taking part in the debate that is going to follow now in plenary. I'm trying to locate, I know Member Malika is not well. I'm trying to locate Member Tongeni and Member
She's saying
Baga.
now she's going to connect now, Chair.
Is he going to connect and Member Baga?
Yeah, he's trying to connect.
Okay.
Chairperson.
Yes, Member Chabaleng.
Yeah, I actually got confused a little bit. The reason why I connected is because I was cut off of the meeting for a long time. I thought maybe there was an announcement that would be excused from the sitting. I thought maybe I might have missed it, but there was no
I'm
such.
waiting. I'm still waiting on the Chief Whip's office to come back to me, but I think if we've got a quorum, we must continue because the select committee meeting was approved on the program when the program was drawn up, and the chair of chairs asked us to put our meeting in the afternoon, not in the morning. So I don't know where the confusion came in with the program. And I think the select committee must also continue with its work. So if we have 5 members in the meeting, we must continue because the oversight work can't stay behind. So whenever we are 5 members, I am in contact with the Chief Whip's office. Whenever we are 5 members, I just think we must continue with our work as a select committee. And like Member Christians, who must be in the plenary, just excuse herself for that time that she must do input in plenary. Is that in order, members? Member Christians, will that be in order with you?
That will be in order with me. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Member Christians, if you can just control the sound from the plenary because otherwise it will confuse ourselves. I see Member Tongeni is connecting. As soon as we've got the quorum, Marcel, just give me an indication and can you put the agenda on the screen for us, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. We've got 6 members. I'll share the screen now.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcel. Firstly, let me apologize to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the departments for the confusion that was created because of the plenary in NCOP and our meeting. I think there was a bit of confusion in the program, but those things can happen. And let me then also take the opportunity to welcome you all to this meeting. I think it's a very important meeting, and I'm glad that members also understand that the oversight work of this committee must continue. And let me welcome the Minister and the DM and the departments of DSD, Sassa, and the NDA into this meeting, who will give us a briefing on the budget and the APP of 2021 and 2022 from DSD side, and then also Sassa and the APP and the NDA and the APP. We have allowed 40 minutes for each department to give us their briefing, and then there's 2 hours for discussions and responses. And after that, we will excuse the departments and the members of the committee must stay behind for the adoption of the committee program. Can I then ask if this agenda can be approved? I need a mover for the adoption of the agenda, please.
Chairperson, I move for adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Member Chabaleng. Is there a seconder?
Chair.
Lehi. Thank you, Member Lehi. Without any further ado, Marcel, did you receive any apologies?
Chairperson, we have an apology from Ms. Latuli. She sent in a doctor's note. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and then Member Malika is also, but I don't think she put in a formal apology, but I spoke to her this morning. She's also not well. Without any further ado, members.
Honorable Chair.
Yes, Mr. Linton.
My apologies.
Mr. Linton.
Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes.
My apologies, Chair. I wanted to render an apology for the Minister. She's been called into another cabinet meeting. She would have joined, however, the Deputy Minister isn't doing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Can I then hand over to the DM to lead the delegation? Thank you, DM.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members of the Select Committee. And thank you very much for having us. Indeed, it was a real confusion, but it's also been a very hectic day. And me and the Minister had to split because we have a CAB memo that is serving before Cabinet. But as soon as she presents, she will join us, Chairperson. The long and short is that we're here so that you can consider our commitments and what we would like to do, especially as it has a direct impact on provinces. And we would also like the committee to indulge us on, obviously, as we work towards the budget vote for the National Council of Provinces. Without taking a lot of time from the presenters, Chairperson, I would like to request the ADG with your permission to start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. It is a beautiful sight to see with a baby on your arms. As it is.
There you go, say hi.
Hello.
I'm Piano. My first
Hello.
grandchild, the pleasures of working from home.
That's good.
So I brought a boy child to work today.
Okay. Now, as we will also have the National Protection Week of Children starting tomorrow, it's a very good gesture to see you with a baby. Thank you, DM. Let's then hand over to the DG of TSD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and good afternoon to yourself and to the members and my colleagues. We are joined, of course, by our colleagues both at Sassa and the NDA, including our colleagues at the Department of Social Development. Let me keep you there to share that. We will share the screen. Without wasting time, I will just acknowledge them. It's all the executive leadership of the department, including the executive leadership of both the NDA and Sassa. And of course, as indicated, we're led by the Deputy Minister in this meeting. I would start, Chair, I know that Chair has given us 40 minutes. We can utilize the 40 minutes. In some instances, we may not go into the detail of the presentation because we had shared it before, if that's okay with the Chair. Alternatively, if the Chair wishes that we go into detail, we'll certainly do so. Whilst my colleague tries to put it on the screen, I have shared it. I shared the presentation. I hope that Chair, yourself, and the members can see it. If I could just get an indication.
Not yet.
Yes, we can see it, but can I also ask the other members on the platform to please mute your mics?
Why is it taking so long?
Somebody's mic is mute, is on at the back, but you can continue your presentation. We can all see.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Of course, we are presenting, upon the request of the committee, our plans insofar as the APP and the strat plan, as well as the budget vote, which we will do at a high level towards the tail end. The portfolio, as you know, Chair, we call ourselves a portfolio, which is the Department of Social Development, Sassa, and the National Development Agency. And we present, or rather we tabled our APPs on the 15th of March to Parliament, and we complied accordingly in terms of the time frame in that regard. We must say that these APPs are indeed a continued expression of the key commitments of the sixth administration to improve the quality of lives of all South Africans. And we do this through the investments that we make in all citizens, both at the department and including our agencies. We also just wanted to highlight, Chair, that these APPs are aligned to Chapter 11, which is largely on social protection of the National Development Plan, Agenda 2030, and are rooted in the government's priority of the medium-term strategic framework, of which we are in the second year now, particularly as it relates to Priority 4 on consolidating the social wage through reliable and basic services, the Social Assistance Acts, and of course the Sassa and the Nta Acts respectively. These APPs are collectively facilitated, were collectively facilitated and aligned to government's priorities. And just if I could speak to two of those, the one is the National Strategic Program on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. So this APP is premised, or rather has a strong alignment to that plan, including the economic recovery and reconstruction plan post-COVID-19. Well, not post-COVID-19, but rather that the president has a recovery plan, rather that the president has initiated. And of course, we've got one or two programs within the context of that program, of that plan, including the Presidential Employment Stimulus Package. Then, as the department, we of course have concurrent functions with provinces, and the bulk of our work is really done at the provincial level. And that's why this presentation to the NCOP is a very important presentation, because we're also able to engage with the members of the portfolio of various provinces in this regard. And I can say, Chair, that we've adopted a common mantra across the organization and across the portfolio. This is for the first time that, as the entire DSD portfolio, including our agencies, as well as the provinces, we have a common purpose in terms of what we do. Before, you'd note that the planning was done at different levels and was not really integrated, but we have now an integrated approach, and we plan accordingly together. So what I say here, if you go to any single province, whether it's the NDA, whether it's DSD, or whether it's Sassa, they will all tell you that we are working towards building a cohesive and resilient families and communities by investing in people to eradicate poverty and vulnerability towards creating sustainable livelihoods. So we have a common purpose. And of course, the department and its portfolio as a whole, we just wanted to flag this for the purposes of the budget vote, but mainly at the contextual analysis, that we have indeed, as a department, been underfunded generally, given the demand for our services and the work that we do in terms of rising social ills, rising challenges, and of course the consistent challenges that we have around poverty, inequality, and unemployment in the country. But in the main, I want to say that we've had to learn this lesson very harshly now during COVID, when a demand for our services skyrocketed, and we've had to do much more in order to ensure that the needs of our recipients are met and met accordingly. And I'll speak a little bit more as we go to as we go a little further in the presentation. Okay, the next slide. Okay. As I indicated, Chair, what we're doing now is we're working towards a reimagined and a reinvented portfolio. And in doing so, we are making a number of strategic shifts in order for us to deliver effectively and more efficiently on our mandate. And I'll speak to those a little later. We continue to take lessons, of course, as I indicated, from the experiences that we had with COVID-19. Of course, we present this APP within the context of also very, very serious budget cuts. They're no longer imminent, they are now in place. And systemic challenges that we face as an organization and increased demand for our services, as I indicated. Just on the budget cuts, I want to indicate that I think, if I'm not mistaken, we as social development and the entire portfolio received the second highest budget cuts overall in government on the whole. I think SAPS was first and we were second. And then if I move on, Chair, I just wanted to indicate that in spite of these difficult challenges, the portfolio had to, of course, work hard to ensure that we come up with innovative strategies to cushion and reduce the impact of poor and vulnerable, amongst others. And these are some of the interventions that we had to employ during this difficult time. We've had to provide psychosocial support services and food security across the board. And I think Peter may get into some specifics around numbers in this regard. We've had to also provide social grants, and of course with the top up and the 350 special COVID-19 grants. And my colleagues at Sassa will speak to that. And we've already spent about 22 billion rands in that aspect. We've had to introduce volunteers, amongst others, that play a significant role in creating awareness on COVID-19 in our communities. And we've had to provide shelter and other welfare services to millions of homeless people in the country. Even though we have a serious challenge around homelessness at the moment, as a country, we don't have a clear policy directive on these matters, but we're working closely with our other departments, including Dr. Salga, and of course the Department of Human Settlements, to try and come up with a plan of how we can better coordinate around this. And in particular, we have guidelines that we've put forward that we're working towards. I think very briefly, our APP, I indicated that we also had to employ the use of technology and automate some of our services, and Sassa will talk a little bit more about that. We also had to maximize our partnership opportunities with the private sector in the main to augment some of the funding challenges that we have, and of course improve our coordination at the portfolio level, but also with the provinces. And then in finalizing these APPs, we have done some of the following measures. We had conducted rigorous performance review sessions of the previous session. So you'll find, Chair, that in some of the targets that were not achieved in the previous financial year, we've actually brought onto this current financial year as a continuation, so that we're able to meet those targets accordingly. We also, of course, engaged with the DPME on our draft APPs, and they've made some recommendations, including the Auditor General of South Africa. They've made a number of recommendations which we've taken on board, and we'll speak a little bit later about those as well. But also, importantly, we had to build in some of the AG's findings in the previous financial year and ensure that we don't have repeat findings moving forward in the implementation of our specific APPs. But most importantly than anything else, our APP is premised on the Minister's Performance Agreement and the Deputy Minister's Delegation of Responsibilities, as well as our mantra, which we spoke about earlier. So everything you find in the Minister's Performance Agreement is mimicked in our annual performance plans. And again, Chair, we didn't do much. In fact, there were no revisions on the strategic plans in terms of the vision, the mission, and impact, and the outcomes remain the same throughout the portfolio. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide because I've already spoken to it in terms of the process that we followed. The most important thing that I'll just say here is that we did take into consideration the BRRR recommendations, the budget review and recommendations from the portfolio committee that were raised in the previous financial year, and we've embedded those quite firmly now into the APP that we are presenting before you. If I can just move, these are some of the fundamental paradigm shifts that I've been talking about. I won't go into detail on these, just to say that we've moved some of the strategic shifts, which I'll speak to just now. We've moved, Chairperson, from being a business as usual organization and portfolio to a reimagined and reinvented portfolio, where we want to ensure that our services reach our recipients in a much quicker, in a much effective, and in a much more robust and agile manner. So we have also shifted from working individually. You'll find that we're working within the context of the portfolio, as indicated, we are now working as a sector, including with the provinces, and I've spoken to that. And again, this is in the spirit of the portfolio approach. We've moved from working regionally to working more within the context of the district. And in all our districts now, we have champions. Of course, the minister's champion in a district in the Free State, and the DM, a champion in a district in KwaZulu-Natal province. And again, our work and our plans are embedded within the districts. And the colleagues will speak a little bit more about this. And then just largely a quick emphasis that we are not necessarily, we have moved from being an organization that is focused on outputs and being focused more on the impact of our programs and our work. So you'll find that a bulk of our plans are not really events driven anymore, but they're more towards impactful programs and projects that are long lasting to the recipients that we serve. Then very quickly, I won't spend a lot of time here, just to say that these are some of the strategic shifts that we've employed. We want to be an organization that leads in terms of thought leadership when it comes to the sector. We're embracing the DDM model. We are contributing towards economic growth through the stimulus package that we currently have, and through other entrepreneurial opportunities that we have at the NDA, for example. We're looking at a life cycle and developmental approach. So we're looking at the development of people from the time that they are born. In fact, we even go beyond to where people are born to when they pass on. As you know, our services cut across that particular context, or rather cut across individuals from the time that they're born till the time that they have passed away. Again, we're looking at a service delivery excellence in terms of the work that we do. We want to deliver quality services. We're looking at digital transformation. Again, we've transformed some of our programs also because of COVID-19 to a more digital programs rather. So in other words, you don't need to sometimes, at times you don't need to, not at times, but for example, within Sassa, we piloted a program where you are now able to, you don't have to stand in a queue anymore to get a service from Sassa, but you can do it digitally. So that's by and large the way in which we're trying to move in terms of digital transformation. I won't go to the other areas because I think some of them are quite self-explanatory, and some of the others we'll speak to as we get to the bulk of the presentation. This chairperson on this slide, again, is just an element, or rather reminding members of the alignment between our vision, our mission, our impact statements, and of course our outcomes. And then if I can get now to the crux of the APP, sorry, there's one element that's missing, that's our values here. And our values, if I can quickly share them with you, the one is respect, the other is equity and equality, the third is accountability, the fourth is caring, the fifth is human dignity, and lastly, Ubuntu. When you read the first letters of all of that, you will see that it spells reach you. So that's our values as an organization. It's actually about reaching you, and that's the values that we have. Then quickly, I just want to say that on this slide, we talk about the specific targets in the APP program. We now have 67 targets, chairperson, and this is the breakdown of the targets. In the previous APP, we had 59 targets, and now we have 67 targets. And I will now ask Tabani to quickly deal with program 1 and Bula, and then we will take you through the specific programs, chairperson and members of the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, TG. Good afternoon to the Honorable Chairperson and all the honorable members, colleagues present here. The program 1 is one of the key programs in terms of being an enabler. So it is the support service program to all the core programs so that they're able to deliver in their services. So there are a few issues that we want to deal with in terms of us reinventing not just DST, but also this particular program. One, we want to make sure that we are able to deal and resolve all these protracted processes so that we are able to create an efficient and effective environment so that our programs are able to deliver their programs efficiently. We also want to make sure that we are able to improve in terms of the risks as well as enforce ethical practices that are good, that are effective, so that we have good governance as an overall as well, not just for us, but also including for the entities that we need to provide oversight on. We want to deal with issues of non-compliance with the legislation and policies prescripts as we get the feedback from the AGSA. And some of the things we want to make sure that we also find ourselves shifting from the previously and predominantly paper-based ways of working and through the development of an electronic and digital F&D system. And I'll give some of these, but also lastly, which my colleague Kumbula will talk to in terms of corporate services and the workforce. Want to make sure that we improve in the insufficient capacity and human capacity and skills within the sector, and we've developed a sector human resource plan and to make sure that we deal with this. But also, DG had indicated, even within Sassa as well, we have seen that we are making efforts toward this digital transformation, and we see how the world is being now digitized and all these applications and so forth that are being done electronically. So Sassa is focusing on that, and they've also come up with a re-engineering process in terms of improving the business processes that they have. We also want to make sure that even through the FDA, we are all able to build a high performance and self-sustained organization that will make sure that it also assists in strengthening the capacity of the CSOs as I did. Then next to the slides and in terms of specific targets, which then speaks to this particular background I've said. It's about the list of, next slide, Mr. Maduleka. It's about the list of specific targets that we have done. One of the areas that we have been able to do is DG did indicate that we are trying to plan together with the provinces as well and how we have engaged. For the first time, we are having our plans as aligned, also aligned with our those plans of the different provincial departments. Of course, acknowledging and recognizing that there are provincial specific priorities and there are also dynamics within the provinces. But by and large, comfortably one can say there is an alignment in terms of our plans as well as those plans of specific provinces. So we could say that we have a sector strategic plan as a department. One of the targets that we are also having as well, the two on M&D, one of the issues that has been happening has been the provision, which increased in terms of the demand for food. And so we are looking at these various models in which food has been provided. One in terms of through the CNTCs, through the food parcels, through the vouchers. So we'll be doing an evaluation and making a clear proposal in terms of the business case, which of these seems to be working. So there is an evaluation from an M&E that will be conducted, looking at the hybrid model for the food provision in South Africa. The last one I did speak in terms of us, in terms of this reinventing, is to move from the paper base, and hence we are developing and we are at an advanced stage in terms of developing the electronic M&D system. It will be not just for us as the national department, but it will go down up to a district, which is in line with the DTM model. But for us to say where activities are happening, we're able to have a one view and also mainly having a real-time information, and we'll begin to talk more about our programs. This relating to as well the finance, we are committing ourselves in the current financial year to obtain an unqualified audit opinion, and also we will be making sure as well, as in line with what is dictated to us in terms of empowerment of women, we will be making sure that throughout our procurement processes, we give more emphasis and space to those entities and those businesses that are owned by women. So we would then have already established a database of women-owned businesses. Next slide. We are committing ourselves as well also in this plan. This is in line with the issues that have been raised by the HASA in terms of our turnover in terms of dealing with irregular expenditure. So this target has been elevated to be the APP, and we are committing that we want by at the end of this financial year to have made a 3% reduction in terms of the irregular food and restaurant expenditure. So these are some of the issues in which we want to turn around in terms of governance. We strengthen ourselves in terms of our capacity to do oversight over the entities, and one of the areas that should be doing will be having a shareholder compact that has been developed, and this is also included in the Minister's Performance Agreement in terms of strengthening our capacity to provide oversight over these entities. And finally, from my part, before I hand over, to my colleague, Mr. Ndaba, to take us through the IT as well as human capital, would be about the strengthening in terms of making sure that we are implementing the stakeholder and donor management strategies. Thank you, Chairperson. I'll hand over then to my colleague from Corporate Services to take us through IT related as well as human capital targets.
Good morning, Chairperson and members of the committee, as well as DM. Thank you very much, Tabani. My name is Kumbula Ndaba. The next issue that we want to deal with is really the integrated social protection system. We want to make sure that it is implemented. So in terms of our annual target, we want to make sure that we develop a substance abuse system into our case management system. We also want to integrate our VEP program as well as the GPV system. Lastly, we also want to ensure that we have or develop an alternative care management system into our case management system. Now, in terms of our next area of focus, which is the last for me, we also want to look at our HR plan or the sector HR plan. And in this instance, we want to make sure that come the end of the financial year, we've implemented a sector HR plan. In this regard, we are going to do quite a number of things which involves looking or auditing our skills, looking at the needs of the organization, how many social service professionals we need, etc., and how they are placed, and all the resources that will be required for such placing. So a lot of work has gone into this project, and this is basically what we are doing. But there's a particular bias for obvious reasons on social service professionals. So we will also be developing a sector strategy for the employment of social service professionals. And in this regard, we've developed a draft sector strategy for the employment of social service professionals. And this we hope to finalize soon, and we continue to engage all the role players so that we make sure that the strategy talks to our needs and the needs of the organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. We'll go to program 2 and I'll ask Brenda to speak to this. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members, GM and colleagues. Program 2, can you just move to the, I think you can just move to the next slide. This is the program basically where in the big money of the department is located. The 195 billion that you see there, the annual target, is basically the amount of money that is allocated to Sassa for them to pay all the individual grant beneficiaries. So how we do this is the 195 is basically split every month by, it's allocated to Sassa in monthly tranches for them to be able to pay all the different grant beneficiaries, including also there's a social relief of distressed beneficiaries who are not necessarily grant beneficiaries in the normal sense, but they get paid by Sassa in the instances that they are assessed to be in dire need of some temporary assistance. So that's the whole allocation that gets transferred. And then let's move then to program 3, which is where the policy making for the grants and other parts of the social security system are made. So in that policy, for this current financial year, our plans are really to prioritize improvements in the coverage of social security across the country, but also to improve the administration, which has an impact on the performance. Obviously, if you write policy without addressing the administrative issues, then you will not be able actually to meet your policy objectives. So some of the things that we are hoping to do in this year, for example, is to address the silo approach in which service delivery happens currently in social security. You will see some of the policies that are speak to which address this matter. We also want to deal with some of the shortcomings in the Sassa Act, not the social assistance legislation, but the institutional legislation by which Sassa is established. There are some challenges there in terms of the governance of Sassa, which we want to address in the Sassa amendment bill that we will be preparing during this year. We also want to deal with coverage gaps. For example, there are people who are working long-term in the country who have formal jobs, and some people also in the informal sector who have jobs, but because of institutional weaknesses in the design of the social security system currently, they do not have a platform through which they can save for themselves, so that should they meet certain risks that like become unemployed or if they should become disabled, or if they die and leave dependents behind, they don't have a platform through which they're able to save in a proper pooled way. So these are some of the things that, some of the work that we'll be looking at. We're also looking to strengthen the financial and compliance management at Sassa through audits that will be done by the inspectorate. It's still an incubation structure, but it's already started doing some of this work. So if you look, for example, at that first line in terms of the policy on the integration of child support grant beneficiaries. This is about making sure that grant beneficiaries are not only accessing grants, but missing out on all the other social protection benefits that are offered by the country. So this is what the one that I was speaking about, dealing with some of the silo approaches that government as a whole operates in how we look after children. So we want to make sure that if you are receiving a child support grant, you get other benefits that the country is able to provide. The Fundraising Act and the Sassa Act is about improving the administration of social security provisions by dealing with some of the administrative weaknesses and the governance weaknesses I spoke about. And then the policy on income support is what everyone refers to as the BIG policy. So we're hoping to finalize the policy work in that regard and also table it to Parliament during this financial year for consideration. And then we also want to deal with a very important thing, which is about access to administrative justice for social assistance beneficiaries. They need to have a platform through which they can appeal without having to spend money in court to exercise their right. So the appeals tribunal is the platform through which we do that for them. We make that available, and we're hoping this year to make sure that we at least adjudicate 70% of those appeals within 90 days. We normally achieve much more than that, but because we are fixing the system, we're expecting that some of the changes that we're going to be making this year might make it harder to reach much higher targets, but that's the aim, at least to make sure that 70% of them are dealt with within 90 days. Then if you go to the next slide, I'm almost there. The policy on maternity support is also about issues of dealing with silos in the way that pregnant women are dealt with in terms of their access to social security. We want to make sure that they access early and that they also are able to, we balance the contributory and the non-contributory access to maternity benefits for people in the country. And then we also make sure that people who are working temporarily or are in short-term atypical employment also have a platform to which they can contribute for their own risks. Similarly, we want to deal with issues of the broader social security coverage by creating mandates for people to be able to contribute to a fund and make sure that when they retire, they don't only rely on a grant. They've been saving throughout their working life, and they're therefore able to get a decent income in retirement. Then the last thing, that the social budget bulletin. It's a very interesting publication we started a couple of years ago. We've just finalized one that's on our website now. The social budget bulletin is a statistical analysis, basically, of social security expenditure and revenue sources over a 10-year period. And what we're doing with that is doing the analysis to see the extent to which people are accessing what we're spending, the effectiveness of that spending in the country, who is accessing that spending, and the interaction between that expenditure and the performance of the economy and people's social development based on that expenditure. So that report is it's on our website now. We just published the second version, and we're hoping to do the next version by the end of the financial year. The last one is the audit, which I referred to, which is about auditing the performance of Sassa grant payment model to make sure that they are actually implementing the legislation as intended, and the systems are such that everyone who's supposed to get a grant is getting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask Isabella to deal with program 4?
Thank you, DG. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, and Deputy Minister and colleagues. I'm dealing with program 4, which is welfare services. My name is Isabella Sakawana. And the first slide, it highlights why the program exists and We are here as welfare services to create an enabling environment for delivery of equitable developmental social welfare services, but we are doing it through policy formulation, and we've got norms and standards. And we also acknowledge the fact that we're not able to deliver on our own. We are delivering in partnership with other partners, and therefore it's very critical for us to support those partners. Now, the other issue that is addressed there is what is it that we are seeking to address? And the first issue in terms of that is that we don't have a social development and overarching legislation that regulates the sector, and therefore we are trying to address that. But also we are confronted with high levels of social ills, and therefore it is very much important that we address those. We know about quite a number of them that are manifesting on a daily basis. The issues of women and child killings, the rape, the abuse, the ill treatment, and so forth, and the high levels of social crime, coupled with gender-based violence that we always crying about. But also the issue of increasing we need to increase efficiencies in delivery of the services to children, women, youth, and older persons. And in the delivery of the services, we require skilled and knowledgeable social service practitioners so that they can be able to respond. And our services must also target people with disabilities. Now, in terms of the APP, Chairperson, it's one of the program that has got the highest number of APPs, which are 23, which I will not be able to go through them one by one, but safe to say that this APP that we have crafted, they've been able to address issues of policy and legislative formulation, which also include the amendments. And then the second one is about interventions and the programs. And the third one is about issues of quality assurance and monitoring. Now, when we come to the slide that has been reflected, when we come to the first one is addressing the issues of policy and formulation. We know that currently the Children's Amendment Bill is before Parliament. There's quite a number of progress that has been made in this regard. And currently, as the department, we are saying that we need to develop the regulation so that we cannot delay, the implementation of this legislation. Coupled with that, in terms of the quality assurances that I've spoken about, we are quite worried about the quality of services that are being provided in cities, and therefore we are coming up with quality assurance and support systems that needs to be able to be used to support this ECD services to improve on their quality, and the monitoring of the registration of ECDs. We will be monitoring that. Now, in terms of programs, we've got Sinobuyo, a teen parenting program, which is very critical because we're talking about impactful programs, and therefore we are targeting this program that is directly linked, to our beneficiaries, especially those young mothers, who will have no experience in terms of nurturing children, and it is going to be done, digitally. We're moving with times, and the issue of monitoring and implementation of community-based prevention and early intervention services program. When we come to the second slide, we've spoken about the policy and legislation. I think we've got three number of bills that we are amending. We've got Older Persons Amendment Bill, we've got a Social Service Practitioners Bill, which we amend to ensure that it's inclusive of other social service practitioners. And then we've got the new bills that we are introducing, which is your BSS bill, and also the white paper on social development and the social development bill. That are basically new bills that we're introducing. The social development bill is meant to respond to the overarching legislation that you have spoken about. The next slide, in addressing, responding to programs.
DSD, you've got 5 minutes left.
In addressing the issues of gangsterism, we are targeting the districts that are hotspots, that are high risk, to ensure that we are dealing with issues of gangsterism. But we also have APPs that are addressing issues of substance abuse and social crime prevention. Yes, I will skip this one. Monitoring, we've got a monitoring tool that we are piloting with regard to issues of children, but also with regard to the community-based prevention and early intervention program. Chairperson, I will pause at that.
Let me ask Peter to come in quickly. Peter and then Fanny. Peter, program 5.
Yes, can you go to program 5? Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, DM and colleagues, I'll be just outlining program 5. Can we go to program 5 possibly on the slides? We are still on 4. Program 5 aims to develop communities and ensure that we create sustainable livelihoods for the most vulnerable, poor, and the excluded South Africans. And we lead in development and ensuring that everyone else, including those that are getting grants, are developed and are provided with capacity. And we are trying to address increasingly the issue of developing the building cohesive and resilient families and communities within the community. This financial year, let's go to the next slide. We also are responsible for the registration and the compliance monitoring of the NPOs according to the NPO Act. And we ensure that we develop the guidelines for the implementation of the funding of the NPOs. This financial year, we will be creating over 175 work opportunities. We will also ensure that community development policy that we have developed, that will encompass everyone, is consulted, and we will table the NPO bill to cabinet, and also ensure that all applications for NPOs are processed speedily within 2 months, and ensure that, next slide, and ensure that the compliance within the NPOs are addressed accordingly. We also will ensure that the NPO payment system in all 9 provinces is developed so that we have got a uniform system that ensures that we pay our NPOs accordingly. And we will then finalize one of the very important framework on the linking of social protection beneficiaries to sustainable livelihoods. And we will also provide capacity of all 9 provinces in the implementation of guideline, framework, and policies that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Can we go to the finances high level? Thank you very much, Fanny.
Good afternoon, Deputy Minister and honourable members. Just very brief in terms of the budget allocations for the next 3 financial year that's currently in. If we look at the allocations growth there, it's about 4% from history. I want to go quickly into the various programs. The next slide. That slide gives you a basic indication what is the basic cuts that we have been getting from the National Treasury. As the DG has indicated in the beginning, we're the second highest department that was severe budget cuts. In total of the MTF period, it's about 38.5 billion that were cut. The biggest cuts is on our social grants and also the Sassa administration, but we also cut in terms of operational. If you look at our COE, that's 220 million that was cut over the MTF period for our COE. So we have to work very hard in terms of how we're going to look at what post are we going to fill over the MTF period to stay within the ceiling that has been given by the National Treasury. The next slide. So just in terms of, now I think we've spoken about the details in terms of budget reductions. Let me go quickly to the programs, honourable members. Just give you a highlight quickly in terms of the major cost drivers in each of the programs. So for program 1, the allocation that you see there, almost 50% of that allocation goes towards COE for our support services, but we also pay for centralized services in the department, which includes IT, office accommodation, our travel agency fees, our audit fees, our G fleet, postage and courier, and also stationery has been centralized in the department. So that accumulates almost 100 million that program 1 caters for. In program 2, our social grants, that is not in terms of the monthly payments that will go for the Sassa for the payments of the social grants. We are paying nearly almost 18 million to our social beneficiaries on a monthly basis. For program 3, the allocation that you see there, a portion of that will go towards the operations of the branch, but also we're also supporting and subsidizing our Sassa operations. That's about 7.5 billion that will go towards Sassa operations, where they also pay our social grants on our behalf. For welfare services, the biggest allocation there relates to the ECD conditional grant. That's about R1 billion that will transfer to the provinces on a monthly basis for paying of subsidy, infrastructure, but also maintenance to our ECD services that we're currently subsidizing. There's a small portion that's towards our NPOs. There's about 33 million allocated for that. We're currently subsidizing 27 NPOs on a 3-year cycle. And then for program 5, allocation there includes basically the amount that goes towards the National Development Agency. It's a 250 million that we pay on an annual basis to the National Development Agency, but we also do a funding towards the Central Drug Authority. It was about 7 billion for the financial year. That's in brief, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fanny. Chair, with your guidance, now we'll move on to Sassa, and we'll ask the team at Sassa to start with the presentation from the CEO. CEO Sassa. Okay, I think we have a challenge with Sassa. Can I suggest we go to the NDA? CEO Tamo, can I suggest that we go to the NDA first, and then we'll come back to Sassa?
Thank you, DG, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members, Deputy Minister. Thank you very much, DG and colleagues. Good afternoon. Our mandate, Chairperson, if I may start with the National Development Agency mandate, it's very broad. It deals with development of civil society organization in the country. And in dealing with such, it needs a lot of resources. It's labor intensive, and it's longer because development takes over time. However, I wanted to bring the mandate as a summary to the honorable members so that it's fresh in our minds what we are dealing with, what is facing us now. It's compounded by the pandemic, where we have to struggle for resources. Mandate of the NDA was to grant fund civil society organizations that carries out programs and projects that deals with the poverty eradication in poor communities, and also to strengthen their institutional capacity building so they are able to comply with legislation, they're able to run their affairs through good governance, and they're able to source funding since they'll be in good standing in terms of compliance. And this mandate is broader in the sense that it's got 2 mandates in one. The secondary mandate is that of consultation, dialoguing with communities for development experience between CSOs and government, and also to facilitate debates for development policy, and to undertake research and publication aimed at providing the basis for the development policy. Further to this, Chairperson, if I may, it's the mandate as per section 4, where it's clear that NDA was merely to conduit funds to this civil society organization. However, with the current allocation, we struggle every year to sustain the capacity of the civil society, the ever escalating demand of them being prepared to receive these donations for them to run their affairs. And safe to say that originally NDA was located within the National Treasury, where all government departments in terms of allocation were contributing so that NDA could contribute these funds. However, with the migration of NDA from National Treasury to social development remains solely responsible for funding the sustainability of the NDA. And with the dwindling resources and the ever decreasing budget, we're finding a strain to sustain our existence and to sustain the civil society organization that we're mandated to develop. And in summary, the 5-year strategy, I did not touch, Chairperson, on the context analysis because the DG had summed up for the portfolio, which is Sassa and ourselves. Our key areas that we're looking at is the amendment of the Nta Act. It's long overdue in the sense that Nta Act was promulgated way before the PFMA. So what we are challenged with is that whenever we go for donor funding and partners that are willing to invest in Nta, the gray areas within the competing legislation defeats the purpose of the Act by way of having the PFMA superseding the Nta Act. Therefore, in terms of what we could do with the Nta Act in getting donors to fund Nta and its programs, it's defeated by the compliance with the PFMA, and it gets us into trouble year after year with the Auditor General. So we've prioritized that we need to quickly look at this. We've facilitated the first part of the consultation. We are yet to do the second part, which will be facilitated by Department of Social Development. The turnaround strategy is brought about by the evolution. Since the inception of the NDA, we have evolved and moving from the basis of having funds to grant it to civil society when we had being allocated by National Treasury Direct, and now being only surviving through the allocation from social development. So the turnaround strategy will talk into capacity in terms of skills of the staff that we have, in terms of spreading the rent, in terms of spreading the footprint, and ensuring that we align to the district development model. The review of the service delivery model, we have footprint in provinces. We've since had a footprint in the district. However, due to the limited resources, we've been piggybacking on the Sassa, we've been piggybacking on the social development to ensure that the portfolio, wherever there is a Sassa office, there's a portfolio representation on the ground. However, we want to intensify the alignment to the district development model so that we can have at least a footprint at a broader level of accountability. The strengthened civil society capacity to deliver on NDA mandate, like I indicated earlier, to say development is labor intensive. We have a lot of civil society organizations. If you check the register of the NPO, it's forever growing, it's forever escalating. However, we want to position ourselves such that we have secondary NPOs or CSOs that will be responsible for the primary or emerging CSOs in the respective district areas, so that they are able to discharge the services at a much coordinated level, so that we mitigate this having to have lot of capacity in terms of the professionals by way of staff at NTA. The review of the business model, we are challenged by the issues of digitization, which has been compounded by the COVID, where we have to relook into how we run our business. The interface, we've been strong on the interface, physical interaction with our NPLs and the CSOs. However, we want to have a hybrid so that we cater for the rural communities that don't have yet access to this technology for us to have that service. So we want to ensure that we invest on the digitization of our services. However, we want to ensure that we bring along those in the rural communities to have access to our services. Strengthen NDA institutional capacity. We want to ensure that we're in the process of job evaluation in terms of what we do, the capability of our staff, the reskilling of our staff to align with the ever-escalating demand of our resources and our expertise on the ground for development. However, being mindful of the shrinking resources in terms of compensation of employees. So we want to have employees that are fit for purpose, that will be able to get into the ground running in partnership with the civil society, not parallel and competing with the civil society. We are aligned to the poverty reduction targets as espoused in the NDP aims, that is of eliminating poverty and reducing inequality by 2030. According to this plan, we want to ensure that we draw our energies to people and growing in terms of inclusive economy, building capabilities, and enhancing the capacity of the state by empowering the civil society organization, making sure their capacity in terms of governance is strong, they're able to account for the resources, taking the opportunity of the resources that are brought about by the pandemic, where your likes of your solidarity funds, need stronger capacitated NGOs to run and discharge the programs of making change to poverty reduction. We are looking at these key 4 areas, reducing the proportion in alignment to this. This is our space in terms of our mandate. We want to go intensively in making sure that the programs that we discharge are addressing. Yes, it's going to be a mammoth challenge. 2030 is just around the corner. And with these challenges of COVID, we don't think we are going to meet the target. However, we continue to try. Reducing income inequality, we are trying here on this one to say, when we capacitate civil society organization, we want to have a mindset from this sector of winning the greed of this, the Sassa grant, so that people can become sustainable on their own. The resilience that they will have in terms of the capacity that we've gained from our programs will enable them to say, we're no longer dependent on the 350 grant, we're no longer dependent on the Sassa grants. However, we're able to do our own in terms of getting opportunities to participate. And I must say on this one as well, during COVID, we're very strong in engaging National Treasury to say, when all was shut down for the civil society who were in textile, producing school uniform in the main, that were doing directly work-related matters with Sassa, to say, let's give them opportunities because we've capacitated them, we've invested in giving capacity, them to produce school masks, them to produce cloth masks for the staff and the government officials, so that we give them that opportunity in terms of economic empowerment. Can I move to the next slide as well? We are wanting to look into 3 programs that we are having at the NTA. We've moved from 19 targets that we have to 12. We want to focus in terms of what is it that we want to achieve. And the key program that we have is program 2. Program 1 being the administration, program 2 being that of civil society development, and program 3 mainly dealing with the research and the studies that we do in the communities to inform our programs. In governance, we are talking about looking closely into making sure that we deal with the issues of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, decreased by 80%. That's what we are targeting. And safe to say the bulk of this irregular, fruitless, and wasteful has been historic at NTA, and the condonation processes takes a while because board has to do their processes and National Treasury has to come in to do their processes. However, we're on course in terms of facilitation within the capacity of the NTA and interfacing with National Treasury to assist us. We want to look into integrated information management system. Here we want to develop a portal that will assist us. We've seen through COVID that it is doable to say we can work remotely while we save a lot of resources that will be diverted and prioritizing the core function or the core operations of the organization. So once we have digitized, integrated portal, we'll be able at least to have efficiency, agility in the manner in which we discharge our services. Percentage of skills audit recommendations implement, I touched on earlier to say, we want to have a fit for purpose kind of staff that are able to get up and discharge the services as demanded by the mandate of the NTA, that of investing in the civil society organization per se. So instead of having a lot of people doing community development work, we want to have a one person with diverse skills to run and cover much ground than having more warm bodies where it could be done just by one person, while digitization is complementing the rest. We want to have an approved turnaround strategy, which will be a revised NTA strategy as approved by the board, and the state of CSO partnership model developed. In our partnership model, I think I've touched on that to say we've been hit by challenge of competing legislation, that of the Act and that of the PFMA. So through partnership model, we'll be taking the cues from the findings of the AG that has made us to struggle to have a synergized partnership which is compliant and that will yield fruit in terms of dealing with poverty eradication programs without having to look into government to fund and resource NTA solo. But the partnership that we'll have will be private, public, and government partnership. So we want to have a model that will drive us into doing that. In terms of the sustaining the civil society that are doing so much work in the communities, we want to assist by raising the resources for them to continue to do the work. We no longer want to rely on social development alone. We want to intensify our initiatives robustly so. We've since had a resource dedicated just to look into this, how best we look for funding. We've seen that there are opportunities for us to get these, to mobilize these resources in the private sector. We've seen by COVID that there are a lot of interested people. However, we are not prepared to have a model that will guide. So that has really given us an opportunity to relook and revise and revisit our legislation in terms of gunning for this opportunity that has been brought about by the pandemic. Number of work opportunities created as a result of CSO development or interventions. We believe that our communities are not lazy communities. We believe, and it has been proven, that the CSO is a way to go in making sure that these work opportunities is not a burden only of the government, but people are able, unless they are given an opportunity and they are empowered and given an environment for them to create these opportunities, they can be able to do that. We have seen through the volunteer program where they came handy. It was addressing the advocacy, it was addressing the food security during COVID. However, they were earning income in terms of the stipend, which was making a difference in those various households of the 2,000 volunteers that participated. Number of CSO capacitated to strengthen their institution, we're targeting 1,800. And in the main, our main focus is to look into real rural communities outside the easy access where people are able to look for their part-time job within the proximity of the urban areas. So our 1.8 is informed by the resource that we have, but we believe that with the stakeholder partnership model, we can escalate that and we can review our target going forward. Percentage of disbursement of funds to grant funding. Our civil society development model is open. We don't have a timeline to say we open and close to call for proposal, but we put them in a program for development and we fund as and when they are ready to be funded. And we are always observing and monitoring their impact and contribution to poverty eradication programs on the ground. So the 95% would love to have 100%. However, development informs how you're supposed to grant fund. In the proposal that we receive, we assist them to put together those fundable and costable proposal for them to do their programs. And this is our last program, which is program 3. Like I said, to say a mandate as broad as NTAs demands that we should be doing this research. However, we end up doing action research, which is minimum. We end up partnering with the reputable institution to assist us to discharge our mandate. We have since identified just 3 as a target to research publication to undertake to provide a basis for development policy. When I talk about development policy, it's not mainly for the agency as an NDA, but it's development policy at a country level. So we'll partner with the institutions of higher learning here. We partner with the institutions like HSRC so that we're able to produce our research publications at a country level and beyond. And it's always a reference outside the country as well. Number of evaluations conducted to inform program implementation. We're talking of the 3, and it's because of the resources that we have to, we could afford more. However, in terms of what we can afford, this is what we have. Number of dialogues that we'll have with external stakeholders to inform policy. We are at 5, and we would like to do more because we want a lot of stakeholders to understand the importance of shifting, since we're a development state, shifting the mindset of the civil society, which are the key implementing arm of driving the interventions and the programs of government. So our split in terms of our provincial target, this is how we've targeted. We've said in our targeting, there is no province that is better than other provinces. With the little purse that we have, we want to ensure that the social ills that cuts across, we give the equitable share so that everyone can move from the same baseline with the little that we have. However, we encourage our team to continue partner in provinces where they implement. That's why at times, whatever target that we set, at times we get higher in terms of achievement because of the extended partnership that are facilitated at the provincial level with the traditional leadership district development model has come handy in facilitating that initiative as well. I will now hand over to my CFO, Ms. Karen Muthen, to take the financials. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and good afternoon to the chair, members, and colleagues. So the NDA's budget over the next 3 financial years is 217.9 million in year 1, 221 million in year 2, and 222 million in year 3. Now, the NDA's budget has been reduced by an average 22.7 million per year over the NTF period. In terms of the budget allocation per program for the 21-22 financial year, Program 1, which is governance and admin, has been allocated a budget of 105 million, which is 48% of the budget of 217 million for the 21-22 financial year. Program 2, which is the CSO development program, is allocated 47% of the budget at 102 million. And Program 3, which is research and development, is allocated 4.7% of the budget at 10 million. Employment costs in total is projected at 141 million and makes up about 64.7% of the total budget for the NDA. In terms of Program 1, the main budget line items are staff costs at 60.4 million, which is 57% of the budget, operating leases at 12.6 million, IT expenditure at 7.1 million, mainly related to our internet services, consulting fees at 5.3 million, and audit fees at 4.8 million. In terms of Program 2, the main budget line items are employment costs at 74.5 million, grant funding at 13.5 million, capacity building at 3.8 million, digitization of CSO development initiatives at 4 million, CSO engagements at 3.1 million, and project monitoring and support at 3.3 million. In terms of Program 3, which is the research program, we have allocated research studies a budget of 2.3 million. Monitoring of our programs and evaluation studies is allocated a budget of 1.5 million, and employment costs is allocated a budget of 6 million for Program 3. Thank you, Chair. That is a summary of our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much, CEO. I will now ask that we go to Sassa very quickly, and then we'll close the budget vote at high level. Thank you. CEO Sassa, are you back with us?
Yes, I am, DG. Apologies again for dropping off. DG, I will just do the high-level initial process just to set context, because most of the areas have already been covered in terms of the programs within the DSD side. Rapahle, who's our strategy executive, will then talk to the Program 1, and we'll get the CFO to talk to Program 2, which is basically focusing more on the financial arrangements that we have. Members, Deputy Minister who's leading us today, thank you very much for the opportunity for us to present. As we know, basically about 31% of our people in different provinces rely on social grants for sustenance. And these varies from province to province in terms of what the numbers are. We have over the past year been focusing on the 350 special COVID grant, which was approved and decided on by the President last year in April. And this has enabled us to have interesting learnings, and we have also learned even from some of the mistakes that we've learned over the period, and are also looking at how we can take the learnings from there and implement them in our basic programs. Our key focus areas for the next particular year is going to continue to be able to contribute to poverty reduction for those people that are unable to support themselves, to provide temporary reprieve for people that are experiencing a distress, and this in many instances would focus on particularly those people that require basic needs, but in some instances, it would be in relation to disasters. This does not cover a lot of budget, but it's critical for us to be able to provide that support. We'll continue to provide support services in relation to those people that have come from the COVID-19, in terms of making sure that we link those beneficiaries with at least opportunities where they can explore as to whether they can find jobs, but also for us to look at the caregivers and see as to what opportunities exist that we can look at in partnership with other people, but also with DSD and NDA. The key area is to invest in systems that will help us move from manual processes that we've used over the past, so that we can make sure that we impact on our people better. The key transformational agenda programs that we're going to be driving are going to include the business process re-engineering that the DG spoke to. It's going to also include automating a number of our processes to make sure that we can serve our people better, but also we can ensure that we work with speed in terms of delivering the service that we need to deliver to our people. Digitization is also going to continue to be central to the way we do things, as also the CEO of NDA indicated that we need to make sure that we move in terms of how we're going to impact on our people, but at the same time, we should make sure that nobody gets left behind. Our people are going to continue to be at the center of what it is that we do, and this will relate to both our staff that we are going to need to make sure that we capacitate, but we make the way they do work easier through the automation process, so that we can impact on our clients or beneficiaries better, to make sure that we create a better life for them. We're going to have over the next MTEF a huge budget reduction that comes to about 2 billion, with this current year, with us having a reduction of over 600 million, with 50% of it being towards staff. So we're going to have to find new ways of how we work, so that we can make sure that whilst we innovate on how we do work, we can at the same time make sure that our people are not impacted negatively. Rapatla, over to you, Me.
Thank you, CEO. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members, Deputy Minister, DG, CEOs, and colleagues. I will be presenting on the performance information in terms of the targets that we are proposing to implement in the coming financial year. As an organization, we sit with two programs, which is Program 1, which is administration, and Program 2, which is benefits administration. And overall, the targets that we seek to achieve in the coming financial year, they've been set at 40, and 26 of which are in Program 1 and 14 are in Program 2. In terms of the constitutional mandate that we have been given of providing social assistance to South Africans or eligible people who are unable to support themselves and or their dependents, we will ensure that those beneficiaries that continue to remain in the system and their circumstances have not changed, we will continue to ensure that we continue to support them and provide them with the resources that are required. We will also be endeavoring to attempt to ensure that the new entrants are provided with the services, and we are able to ensure that they have access to the facilities in order to apply for the grants. In the coming year, we are envisaging that the number of grants will increase to from 18.4 million to 18.8 million, and the amount of money that has been allocated for this program sits at 193 billion. As you could see, that the increases in the past year has been very little, so we really trying to ensure that we reach, and we also ensure that where there's loopholes, we close the loopholes so that only people who qualify are able to achieve or to continue to receive the grant. The next slide gives us just an indication of what has been the growth of social grants over the past 4 years, and where do we see ourselves in March 2022, which is 18.8 million. As at the end of the financial year this year, we are sitting at just slightly below 18.5, and we're starting to see an increase in the demand as people start to as more people have lost jobs during the COVID-19 period. Next slide, we are also, as part of our priority, is to ensure that we provide social relief of distress to persons who are experiencing temporary distress. This we do to ensure that while they are looking for other opportunities, at least they are assisted. In this regard, priority is given to people who are in disasters or who are experiencing undue hardship. Unfortunately, our budget has just been slightly cut in the coming financial year, and therefore the number of people that we'll be targeting coming this year would be slightly lower. So we have an budget allocation of 391 that we have set aside for social relief of distress, and we will ensure that the people who deserve this particular grant are given. In addition to that, for the month of April, we were a certain amount of money was set aside to pay the extended COVID SRD grant to individuals who lost their jobs or who were unable to generate income during the COVID-19. Unfortunately, this has come to an end at the end of April, and therefore we have not received any extension in this regard. So our work in this, we will be cleaning up the system and ensuring those who have lodged appeals continue to be paid during the remainder of the next 3 months. In terms of the issue about reduction of exclusion errors, we have noted that due to some of the administrative areas, there could have been beneficiaries who are qualifying, who could have been excluded from qualifying into this program. Priority will be given to children below the age of 1, because we have noted over the years that the take-up rates among this group of beneficiary has been very low, so they've been given a prioritized area. And in the coming year, we are targeting to ensure that we achieve at least 563 of the children in this age category. The other element of exclusion was the issue around disability, people with disabilities. We have realized that in the way we implement the disability model and the way it's being interpreted, there could be discrepancies. So we are reviewing it in order to ensure standardization and to ensure that we don't exclude people who would really qualify in line with the legislation and the regulations that are provided for in the Social Assistance Act. Next slide. In terms of the priority of providing supporting initiatives for people who are young and who particularly the caregivers and the young people and the young mothers, we are looking at the issue around, in terms of the SRD amount that we have been allocated, we have set 30% of the SRD money to be awarded through cooperatives and through small businesses, hoping that it will also attract the young people and also people who were previously caregivers, who would have, some of whom would have benefited from the COVID-19 grant. We have developed partnerships with government departments to ensure that we share information and ensure that people are aware of those beneficiaries and are able to take advantage of the bigger database that we have also been able to develop during the COVID-19, where you see that there's young people with potentials who can get bursaries. Some of them could get support in terms of employment. So we have developed mechanism of sharing information and also sending SMSs to these beneficiaries when we see opportunities that arise out of that. So we've started with this initiative, and we are hoping that in the long term, we should be able to link beneficiaries to opportunities for development and opportunities for employment. Next slide. When it comes to the issues of customer experience and improving service delivery, we have ensured that we want to ensure that when people apply for social grants, they are processed within a period of less than 10 days. Already we can indicate that already more than 80% of our grant applications are processed within 1 day. However, we do have exceptions that are still taking longer. So we want to reduce all applications to be processed within 10 days. We also want to improve efficiency in terms of how we've been dealing with these inquiries. We want to ensure that we deal with all inquiries within 10 days. And if there's disputes, we also deal with them within 40 days. Within 14 days, we've had challenges during the implementation of the COVID-19 because of the volumes that we have experienced. But in this regard, we've also gone out to look for additional assistance in order to improve our efficiency and ensure that clients are serviced as fast as possible. The next slide. In terms of the management of the payment processes, we have set ourselves a target of ensuring that we have all our grants that we process, they are successfully processed. However, we do note that time and time again, you would have a challenge where people may die as you have just processed the payment file, or you may find that some of the accounts are not verifiable. So that's why our target is sitting at 98%. And over the time, we are noting that we are achieving 99%, and we want to continue to sit on this particular target to ensure that we improve efficiency in terms of how we deal with that. Coupled with that is that we want to ensure that as we do the payments, we also monitor our agreement with SAPO to ensure that once the money is in people's account, they are able to withdraw without any hesitation or without any barriers. And therefore, in this particular case, we are improving our monitoring systems across SAPO to ensure that we monitor payments as they happen, and we also deploy people to go and assist where the need is required. Next slide. In terms of the administration program, which is program 1, here it's most in terms of our compliance, we remain committed to ensuring that we need to ensure that the public is informed, and we table our annual performance plan and an annual report and account in terms of what we have been given, because we are there to serve the nation, and we have to be accountable and ensure that we ensure that we comply to all governance principles. On the issues of reduction of or management of fraud and corruption, we are targeting to ensure that all reported fraud and cases are investigated. But more than anything, we are starting to invest in ensuring that we are proactive. And therefore, what we are investing in is detection and also fraud and awareness campaign, so that we can deal with fraud even before it happens. So the suspected fraud cases that we'll be working on is to ensure that within the grant administration, we have proactive mechanism to address the issues and identify the gap areas and improve the systems in terms of detection and closing up the gaps in fraud. In terms of the internal audit, we will focus on 20 internal audit reviews, and this will be on high risk areas, and this is aligned to the risk management strategy. Next one. And linked to the issues that has been important to this particular organization is the issues to be seen to be dealing with corrective action. And where we are dealing with this is to ensure that we deal with we reduce our irregular expenditure, we reduce the wastage and non-compliance, and we start to be seen to be effective also in dealing with discipline and or corrective action where necessary. In this regard, we will ensure that all labor relation cases, 60% are finalized within the prescribed timeframes. We will ensure that our financial misconduct cases, all the current and the backlog are dealt with, and investigations will be properly conducted. And our targets are at 95% for the backlog and 75% for those that are current cases for financial misconduct cases. In terms of the audit outcome, we're looking at ensuring that we have a unqualified audit outcome, and we also commit to ensure that we will deal with our audit action plan, and we also commit to ensure that all our suppliers are paid within 30 days, and we also are committed in line with our agreement with the National Treasury to ensure that the administration cost for social assistance remains within reasonable means, and we want to ensure that they are always within the 5% target. And then we will also ensure that the write-offs or the debts that have been identified are recovered or written off. Majority of the debts registered that Sassa sits with is that from social assistance beneficiaries, most of whom are unable to even pay for this, and therefore it's upon us as Sassa to do investigation and provide a proper written report that can allow and justify the write-offs. In terms of irregular expenditure, we want to ensure that we reduce our irregular expenditure by 75% and over the medium term to ensure that we don't have irregular expenditure. So I've already talked to the issue around the administration costs, and the other slides, DG just summarizes the breakdown of the targets per province. And I'll just hand over to CFO, whose presentation will start from slide 67.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, Deputy Minister, Acting DG, and the CEOs, colleagues. I will just quickly take the committee through the budget or the financing plan of the organization, Sassa. This slide, Honorable Chair, it just depicts the guidance that we got from National Treasury during the MTech process that indicated that when we consider our budget for the 2021-22 MTF, we should be able to consider the macro fiscal outlook that the economy of the country is not doing very well, but also to understand that there's no additional funding that we'll receive from National Treasury, that any plans should be financed within an organization, but also a call for all institutions to assist actually in budget process, which is the MTF budget fiscal consideration for the purposes of stabilizing the public debt. And we also needed to really look at any initiatives that will stimulate economic growth. That means that we should be able to focus on investment. Next slide. The next slide, please. Yes, thank you very much. This Honorable Chair just depicts actually the overall budget reductions that Sassa has received over the period. Of very note, you will recognize that under the reduction, where we're talking about the reduction for the 2020, you will see that we have lost 229 million in the year 2021, and we have lost 641 million, which actually the DG did allude to when it was making the presentation. And in 2022-23, there is an anticipation that we'll be able to lose another 817 million. So it means that over the MTF, Sassa will not receive any additional funding. Of that total amount that you will see that in the total budget for 2020-2021, Honorable Chair, we had 7.4 billion, and even the 2021-22, we still have actually the 7.4 billion, and going actually to almost 2022-23, where you at least move to 7.5 billion. But overall, there's no increase over the MTF period. That means that generally, Sassa's budget is being reduced over the MTF. Next slide, please. This just depicts actually the breakdown of the two programs that Mayor Mkhupa has already spoken about. In 2021-22, admin program, it will have 3 billion, and program 2, which is benefit administration, has been allocated at least 4.5 billion. That is the split. I can at least mention that of the total Sassa budget, at 3.6 billion goes to compensation of employees, which is 48% of the total allocation. Next slide, please. This slide, Honorable Chair, just depicts that there is a bit of budget implications, and this just indicates that because we have actually got the reduction of 641, this was part of stabilization of the wage bill. The 641 million, Honorable Chair, was supposed to be taken from compensation of employees. But when we look at the operational requirement of the organization, we could not be able to reduce the total amount from compensation of employees. A portion of it had to be taken from goods and services. So the implication of this is that we may have to really look on the limited capacity that we may have within the agency and reprioritizing some of the critical areas in this regard. The second part that we'll have to deal with is the issue of the existing contracts, because the current contracts, some of them have been concluded with a CPI increase. And if we're not having any increase in the baseline, it means that we'll have to reprioritize to fund those contractual obligations. The third element is that the new goods and services that we're gonna procure during the year 2021-22, it will come with increases as the prices are not remaining stable. It means that we may have to buy it at an increased prices, yet the baseline has been reduced. The last thing is that any program, any project that we're gonna at least implement, it must come from the baseline of Sassa. That is the implication. Next slide, please. So as part of the strategical interventions that we have considered as an agency, just to mitigate on these budget reductions, just to give comfort to the honorable members that we have considered some of the options that we are looking at. One of the options that we're looking at, we're implementing the business process reengineering. And this has to do with the relooking of the capacity of the organization. We have already appointed in this year a service provider that will work with us just to make sure that we assess the capacity needs. And this will culminate in the efficient use of the current capacity, but also to assist us on how to plan for the additional capacity. The other part that will come handy in this regard is that we'll have to really look at the reduction of the travel and use of the technology. This, Honorable Chair, you will be able to notice that currently Sassa has already started in this very quarter that we have at least been able to have a grant application online, the old age, the foster child grant, and also the CSG. People can at least apply for these grants online. This will be able to reduce the burden at local offices, that those that will have the infrastructure can move on the online platform. Then the staff within Sassa at local offices can focus largely to those that without infrastructure and those that are in rural places. So that will allow us to shift actually the capacity that we have to where it is needed most. And the other part that we will be able to really do this, it is the issue of that your stationery will be reduced. So it means that if ever you have the online application, you do not have to have much paper that you'll have to drive it, but also to reduce the back office work. So it means that the capacity of the organization, operations of the organization, that part will have to really look very closely. We're also looking very hard just to look at the mitigation of current case that we have with the CCMA, where Sassa employees want to be uplifted from level 9 to level 10 and from level 11 to level 12. And what we're doing is working with DPSA just to make sure that at least that case, it is finalized in favor of Sassa. But if it doesn't, at least we can mitigate the impact of that case. Lastly, but not least, is that we have relooked at all the needs of the organization and prioritize the funding for the things that we're committing on the APP, which means that we're prioritizing the most critical elements and projects within the baseline, because we understand that as and when the budget reduction happens, therefore we may have limited resources to utilize. I think that's all that I wanted to share with the committee. Thank you very much, DG.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can we go to the next slide? Chair, we want, if I can indulge you just for about 2 minutes at the committee, just at a high level to indicate that in terms of the budget vote, and I won't go through everything here, of course, our budget vote for vote number 17, the Department of Social Development. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide level. Okay. Is taking place on the 9th of June. I believe it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Of course, it will be held against the theme, which is our mantra, which is what we've proposed, and a similar approach that we use for the National Assembly budget vote. Of course, we will also deliver this virtually because of the challenges that we have around COVID-19. And of course, if you go to the next slide, one of the key areas that we'll be focusing on is operationalization of the district development model, and then of course, within the context of social development or the social development portfolio. We also want to focus on NPOs in terms of the services and support that we render through them, registration, but more so compliance-related matters and the effectiveness of NPOs in terms of delivering on their work. And of course, we also will talk about the fact that the President has now acceded to the Social Assistance Act in last year, and we're now operationalizing the inspectorates. We'll also talk about the social assistance in terms of the comprehensive social security reforms that we want to bring into place. We'll talk briefly about the ECD migration, and the context to that effect, as well as providing progress on where we are, and as well give an update on the presidential stimulus package. And then, of course, our focus areas are children within the context of care and protection, older persons, the support services that we render there. And then a very important element is around social behavioral change, not just in terms of HIV and AIDS, but also overall in terms of social behavioral change and the work that we bring around families and communities. We will also talk about our contribution to the National Strategic Plan in terms of gender-based violence and femicide. Next slide. And then we'll speak about our plans in terms of addressing alcohol and substance abuse through the newly inaugurated Central Drug Authority. And then we'll talk about our food security programs insofar as it went, or rather in line with the National Household Food and Nutrition Plan. And then, of course, an important plan that we are working on is the absorption of social worker graduates. Again, this is an important element. Just in terms of legislation, some of the colleagues have already spoken about this, the Nta Act that will be amended, the Older Persons Bill, the NPO Bill, the White Paper on Social Development, and of course, the Children's Amendment Bill, which is currently before your good committee, or rather before Parliament, and there are public consultations in this regard. And again, part of what we want to do is ensure that we deal with the permanent solution for foster care within the context of the North Gauteng High Court decision that was taken recently. And then, of course, I spoke about the issues around community development and the work that we do around building cohesive and resilient communities. Chair, thank you very much. This sums up the portfolio's presentation to this important committee, and indeed the areas around the budget vote that we are looking at, but also the specific elements detailed in the ABP. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Acting DG and all the departments for this brief presentations that we received. Let me take this opportunity then to also welcome the Honorable Minister who has joined us in this meeting. Before I will hand over to members for questions, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister if she would like to give an input before we move on to the discussions on the agenda. Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the welcome. I would rather we listen to the comments from the members, and then we will make the comments at the end. And the DM is also in the meeting. I'm sure she probably might want to say something towards the end. So I will listen so that I don't waste time.
Thank you, Minister. Members, you can raise your hands. I've got already received Member Lahili, Member Baga, Member Christians, Member Dongeni, and then I will read the two questions from Member Maleka, who's got a very bad connectivity. She's in and out of the meeting, so she sent me two questions. So let me start with Member Maleka, and then in the order as I have called your names, you can continue. Now, Member Maleka is saying, Minister, on the 15th of October 2020, the President announced that the social relief of distress grant would be extended for another 3 months, ending in January 2021. As per the medium-term budget, payments, where is this? Okay, what he actually wants to know is the medium-term budget has been approved and also ending in January 2020, the SRD grant. If we can get an update, let me just check quickly. If we can get an update of what the exact amount of money was that was spent then till the end of January 2021. And then a next question, sorry, is regarding Sassa. The overall budget of Sassa has declined by a nominal amount of 625.1 million, or 7.7%, from a revised allocation of 8.094 billion in 2020-21 financial year to 7.469 billion in 2021-22. What are the reasons for the significant budget cuts in the agency's budget for 2021-22, and what impact will these budget cuts have on Sassa's mandate? That is the questions from Member Maleka. We can move to Member Lehili.
Thank you, Chair. Presentation. Ga ke tsore question aka e maleba kgotsa yang ke lebisa mo Sassa. Go na le mme mongwe o na le ngwana o tshelang ka bogole, like disabled. So ga kgone go golla ngwana madi a Sassa ka ntlheng ya gore ga ana ID. So potso ka ke gore mme a ka kgona go tsa mongwe wa leloko o ka kwadisetsa ngwana o madi a Sassa di-grant kgotsa jang. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Lehili. We move to Member Baga.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope I'm audible enough. Chair, firstly, let me welcome the presentation by the department. I have only 2 or so issues that I want to get a sense on. One is the progress made by the department with investigations on the 67,000 people who have received a grant they were not entitled to. The second one, Chairperson, is there any progress made by the department on the recommendations by the Auditor General of South Africa? For an example, where there has to be some form of information that is brought to the fore that talks to getting updated data from Home Affairs, UIF, SARS, and other government institutions to ensure that, we have our information updated all the time so that we don't pay people who are not necessarily supposed to be getting any payment. And the last one, Chairperson, is just to check whether is there any sense of, I know that there was a time set for people to get the grants, the 350 rands that they were getting during COVID-19 and so on. And obviously, there has not been much in terms of jobs or employment that has been created thus far. Is there any discussion as to how probably people can be able to get some help, if any? If so, what kind of thoughts that the department is putting together to try and deal with that? Thank you, Chairperson. That's all from me.
Thank you, Member Baga. Member Christians.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, what stood out for me right in the beginning, the very first speaker said that DSD is there and their services are there to reach the people in our country effectively. Now, I've received a number of complaints, especially in the Northern Cape, and I don't think I need to tell everyone the vastness of the Northern Cape there and the remoteness of it. So if, the services are to reach the people effectively, places like Berkeley West, for example, in the Northern Cape, the Sassa office has been moved from the town area, which was very accessible to everyone. This office has now been moved into a residential area where people have to travel now by taxi kilometers far from their areas into a residential area that is not even near the people that really needs to be serviced. So it is out of the people that needs to be serviced area. And so too, Berkeley West is only one of the areas I'm speaking about in the Northern Cape. If you go to the Namakwaland area, you find the same thing happening there. The offices are not accessible. So that is the first thing that I really want to appeal to the department and to the minister to have a look at and to see if something can be done for these people just to reach the services. You know, many women walk and it is also not safe for them, which is another priority that also falls under the minister, is the safety of our women and children that have to walk kilometers in the dark, etc. Coming to the budget itself, a survey last week showed that, you know, 2 weeks ago, at least 10 million adults were hungry for that week, went hungry for that week. And 3 million children also experienced hunger in that same week. Perpetual hunger is at 2.5 million adults. That means weekly, monthly, 2.5 million adults are still hungry. 600,000 children are still perpetually hungry. So it is of great concern then that the social grant allocation has been cut, that the entire budget has been cut. There's been a decrease in the budget by 338 billion. And I just want to voice my concern about that. We are going into the third wave of COVID, yet allocation towards funding and grants have been cut, and our people remain in perpetual hunger. Program 2, the budget has been cut from 220 million to 195, from 220 billion to 195 billion. Program 4, which is welfare services, is now 475 million less. So more and more people have lost their livelihoods, and yet we have cut on 2 of the most important programs, Program 2 and Program 4. The decline in children's social crime prevention and victim empowerment and social worker scholarships program has also been declined, respectively by 27.12%, 58.43%, and 85.75%. Yet social crime is on the increase. More and more victims, we see it increasing daily. So again, I'm just voicing my concern to the department that if we are serious about assisting crime and assisting the vulnerable in the country, why then have these 2 very important programs been cut and been cut so drastically? Additionally, Chairperson, the social workers that need to work with adoption services. Now, that program has also been cut. The social workers scholarship program has also been cut. Now, if we are looking at the Children's Amendment Act that says that public service social workers are expected to render adoption services, I want to know by the department if they then think, you know, that a budget will then be adequate to see to it that adoption processes run smoothly and adequately and in time, and to see to it that our children are not stuck in a system where they are not placed adequately. Lastly, Chairperson, I just want to again voice that, you know, there's a worrying trend in the country, the scourge of gender-based violence, and additionally the substance abuse and drug abuse. That program has also been cut, yet we see a rise in those areas. And you know, if the department can just explain to us what they intend doing to, if the budget has been cut, to curb them or to continue assisting us with the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, as well as substance and drug abuse. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Christians. Member Dongeni.
Afternoon, Chair. I'm audible.
Yes, I can hear you. You can continue.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks. I've got only 2 questions. How many social workers has been absorbed in the 2020 to 2021 financial year in each province? The second one, will these social workers be exclusively deal with the adoption of services? The other ones have been covered about this one, but if we can get a progress report in connection with the recommendation made by AG, if the department has been implemented or Sassa has been implemented, especially on report 1 and 2, if we can get the progress report, we can be glad. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Dongeni. I'm going to read the questions from Member Chabaleng, whose network is also very poor. His questions are as follows. What are, apart from COVID, did they cut on programs that are not performing or underspending? That's the questions from Member Chabaleng. Is there another member wants to ask a question? So then I will take my turn now. Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and DG. I've been partly covered by most of the members, but one of the issues that is of concern is the reports about the South African Post Office's inability to perform in accordance with the Master Service Agreement and Service Level Agreement. Furthermore, there has been reports that SAPO card management is not compliant with banking standards. What is Sassa doing in ensuring that SAPO performs in accordance with the MSA and SLA? Given overall performance in terms of meeting targets across the last 2 financial years, stringent monitoring of the agency is needed in this regard. Can we have an update on the monitoring in that regard? I was covered by Member Dongeni on the AG reports. And then Member Baga raised a question about the 67,000 people that has received a grant that which were not entitled to. So I've got a question also on that one. And then the other question is, can the department and Sassa provide information regarding the IT system investment, as the AG highlighted several challenges with the IT systems? How many beneficiaries that has been overpaid in May 2020, and the amount of money that was overpaid as a result of this? What was the consequent management in the response, Minister, to the food parcels disagreeing with the SRD content, and how was the distribution thereof monitored? Then lastly, Minister, during COVID, I am coming from the Western Cape. It was disturbing to see what was happening in the streets of Cape Town with regarding to the applications of people with disabilities, how you were portrayed in the media as not doing your job. It was very, very bad for the image of the agency and of your department. And I think, Minister, you came out very strongly in the media to give an explanation to South Africa why these things happen. But I really would like if we can get an update of how far the department has gone to assist specifically the people with disabilities and their grants, and also if there is agreements now with the municipalities and the use of their buildings, so that the people who must apply for their grants can be assisted. I think I'll stop there. Thank you. I'll hand over to you now, Minister, Deputy Minister, and DG.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the Minister and the GM said they will come in at the end. I just seek guidance whether I can then continue with the responses. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members, for the questions asked. Most of the questions were asked about Sassa, but I thought let me perhaps respond on one or two that relate specifically to the department, and perhaps even one that may cut across in some instances. Thank you very much. These are very important questions, and I think that they also assist us in just having a closer look on what the recipients are facing on the ground and the real challenges that are faced across the country in various provinces, so that the decisions that we make are decisions that are that we are conscious of having guidance from members of the committee. Maybe let me respond to the question by Honorable Christians around the issue around I think Honorable Christians raised a concern about the increasing levels of hunger, yet the budgets are consistently being reduced. And I want to say, Honorable Christians, I couldn't agree more with you. And as this department and as this portfolio, we have been at the forefront of providing support to people, particularly the poorest of the poor, through our community nutrition and development centers, through the food parcels, and in some cases vouchers that we've been giving to people across the Republic, including through the social relief of distress, not just the grant, but also through the program that we utilize through Sassa. And I think that the amount of money that we put in, we had to go to the Treasury to ask for additional money at midterm last year, because we had used all our money within the first 3 to 6 months of the financial year. And we needed to go back for more money, and we got about R1 billion, 500 million rand that we used specifically within our provinces for food, and another 500 billion that was used towards the topping up the SRD grants that we needed to continue paying for a prolonged period. I must say though, Chair, that we have empirical evidence and research that indicates the impact of the 350 grant in terms of what it's made to people, and in particular the levels of poverty that we've been able to actually slow down, and the levels of malnutrition that we've been able to slow down. And the indication is that, and I can make reference to about 4 sets of research studies, which we will be very happy to share with the committee, so that the committee is also aware of this, that basically indicated that the majority of people who used the 350 grant in particular used it for food. And as a result, poverty would have been at a much more higher level had it not been for the 350 grant that we have actually employed. And as little as it may sound, it went an extremely long way to reach the millions of people that it did. And so as a department, we took a principled decision that we need to make a request for a further extension of the 350 grant. And that matter is currently being discussed at the various levels. And I just want to say to this committee that we are very mindful and conscious of the budgetary implications and the state at which the fiscus is at. But our view is that if we were to address this issue of hunger, we will in the long run be able to address even deeper levels of poverty. And we are also, of course, very conscious of the fact that we think that this 350 grant is so important that it would serve as a good stepping stone towards the basic income grant, which we hope to introduce in the near future. So this is an important aspect for us, particularly in terms of poverty reduction. And over and above that, of course, Chair, I just wanted to highlight the fact that in terms of the questions, I'm sorry I couldn't get the honourable member, but the issue around the budget cuts, I just want to say that the budget cuts were not as a result of programs not performing or underspending in specific programs. I can confirm that it was not because of that. I can, however, also confirm that there was an MTSF process that was agreed upon that we would, as a government on the whole, needed to reduce the wage bill and needed to reduce budgets across the board. So all departments are affected, but of course, as I indicated, the South African Police Service, I think, was affected at the highest cut, and then came the Department of Social Development and I think Education after that. So we all suffered the same fate of reduced budgets. And in some cases, you'll see that at Sassa, for example, they indicated that you must cut by a certain amount. I think it's about 602 million rand. And they said, cut all of that in COE, cost of employment. And we've had to find a different way of saying that we can't cut in cost of employment an entire 603 million rand. We needed to find other ways in which, or other areas in which we could cut. And unfortunately, we had to find a way of reducing in some very critical programs. And it is indeed unfortunate because obviously we're not given time to come and negotiate and engage in terms of how and where these cuts are had. It's the National Treasury's responsibility to explore those cuts, and they've done so in this instance. Then, Chair, I thought that I should just say that in the midst of these budget cuts, there are a number of measures that we've taken and put in place already, some already existing, and some that we are looking at building into. Firstly, and I'll speak generally about this because of time, is the area around resource mobilization. And we've agreed that we're going to find a creative way of how we can mobilize additional resources, whether it be from third parties, whether it be from the private sector, in terms of our partnerships and our stakeholders that we have, to augment the funding that we have as an organization and across our entities. We're also looking at partnering with some of the development agencies, not just those that are here in the Republic, but also those that have shown an interest outside of the Republic, to augment some of our programs that we have. Of course, we have to look at some savings as well in a number of areas where we can. So we're going to be employing very strict measures to try and reduce overspending. So for example, we've reduced the amount of events that we have as an organization. And we're focusing on having programs and projects that are more tailored towards leaving a more long-lasting effect, as opposed to having engagements that cost $1 million, 2 million rand over a very short period of time. We have to optimize and be very conscious about the impact on the fiscus as we are doing this. And then lastly, I think we also agreed that we will introduce an automation and digitization strategy that is across the board. And we're working on this, and in some areas we've already moved into this. We've just recently closed a monitoring and evaluation within the monitoring and evaluation of our work, digital monitoring and evaluation, so that we have empirical data and evidence in terms of what's happening on the ground across our services and our programs. And this will assist us in terms of making sound decisions moving forward, also in terms of how best to allocate money into certain programs. But most importantly, Chair, I must say that we are also adopting a district development model. Of course, we've adopted already, and we're working on embedding that strategy a lot deeper to ensure that across every single province and every single district, we have representatives that know exactly what's happening within the context of social development. So this is going to help us in terms of having clear dashboards and real-time information around the challenges that we have across the Republic. So, Chair, I think that's an important thing that I wanted to just flag. I would now ask, in terms of social workers that have been, maybe we will share some of that information with members of the committee in terms of the number of social workers that we employed last year. We did make a special call for additional social workers that I think there's 1,800 or so, if not just slightly more than that, between 1,800 and 2,000 social workers that we needed to employ. But of course, the challenge we had is that some provinces were not able to take them on as swiftly as we would have wanted them to. The new processes that we're embarking upon now to try and address, to try and ensure that it makes it a lot easier. I'm going to ask Isabella quickly to deal with the issue of the number of social workers on adoption services. I think we basically, a lot of them have, do you want to deal with it quickly? Okay, and then immediately after that, I will then ask our colleagues at Sassa to come in. Brenda, you want to come in? Our colleagues at Sassa, because the bulk of the questions were in that regard. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DG. In terms of whether the newly employed social workers graduates will be utilized for adoption services, no, because in terms of the requirements, the social worker who's supposed to do adoption, the minimum experience must be 3 years. So when they are employed, they're going to be doing other generic work with regard to social work. Now, I want to also come to the issue of this, the GBV and substance services. How are we going to go about, owing to the budget cuts that we are having? I think DG has responded to the first one in terms of resource mobilization. But what is critical is about intensifying our interdepartment integration, which is internally and with other government departments, but also intersectoral collaboration, where we have to maximize, the available resources. And critical to that is that we also need to invest in prevention services, such as, those services that are get towards changing the behavior of people, your social behavior change programs, where we begin to ensure that we target, boys and girls at a younger age, so that we can deal with the mindset. And once we know that we have invested in that, we are likely to really deal with issues of crime and GBV at an early stage. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. I will now ask our colleagues at Sassa to respond to all the specific questions that were asked in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. The bulk of the questions basically related to grants, but I will respond to particularly the fact that we may not have a quick number in terms of just what the increase was until January, but the total budget that we allocated was 23 billion. We now have another billion that will cover this year in terms of the people that we did not pay with regards to appeals, and some of those that we did not pay for February and March. So that is with regards to SRD that member Malika asked about in terms of what was approved. In terms of the decrease by 7%, I think the DG has already explained as to what the position is with regards to the budgets. What we're trying to do, members and Honorable Chair and Minister understands together with the Deputy Minister in terms of the guidance that we've received and what we've thought could potentially be done on our side is that the more we automate, we can then be able to cut some of the budgets. For example, the CFO earlier on spoke about the issue of reduction in terms of paper, reduction in terms of travel, for us to be able to manage what we need to manage. On the issue of cost to employees, it's quite a challenge, but what we've done is we've put a structure in place under the leadership of one of our executives to look at what are the key and critical skills that we require now, what positions can we fill, what positions can't we fill, and the challenge we have is that there's a range of new skills that we actually require in terms of where we are as an organization. An interim measure that we've done is we've gone to look for funding for us to get capacity building, but also to ensure that we can be able to insource some of the skills that we require, like cybersecurity and skills like those, at least for the next 18 months, for it to be funded by an external resource, whilst we look at the huge reductions that we actually have. I will ask Diane to talk about the issue of SAPO and also the other areas in terms of how we're attending to the issues of grants. Thank you, Chair. Diane.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, honorable members, honorable Chair, Minister and Deputy Minister.
We've lost you, Diane.
My apologies. Can you hear me now? Okay,
yes,
apologies. Thank you, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister. There was a specific question around an application by a beneficiary who does not have an ID document, but has a child that she needs to apply for. That person can apply. There is specific measure put in the Social Assistance Act for people without ID documents to apply, and we accept other documents. If there is any challenge in that specific beneficiary applying, I would really request the honourable member to contact me, and I would certainly help with the local office to make sure that that application is made. It is important that the person who really cares for the child, who is the primary caregiver, does do the application for the grant, rather than getting somebody else to apply purely because the other person has an ID document. So if we can attend to that, I would be very grateful. The issue around
the challenges with the post office. We are concerned about it, and we have put in a number of structures to be able to monitor services from the post office very closely. And that structure goes right through to ministerial level, where a direction can be given to us to address the areas which are not functioning terribly well. We do have regular contact with the post office. One of the issues we've just raised with them very recently has been around the media reports of post office branches being closed. And we're very concerned about the impact that will have on our own clients being able to access their grants. But we do regularly meet with the post office. We also monitor the levels of service very closely and raise the issues where they are not meeting the standards set in the Master Services Agreement or the Service Level Agreement. And an example, in February, where we had a number of challenges with non-payment of grants, we actually imposed penalties in terms of the agreements we have with them.
We've lost you again, Diane. CO, we've lost Diane.
Okay, I'm back again, sorry. Can you hear me? I don't know why it's muting itself. I'm really trying not to move. Sorry, just to say then that with the post office contract, we are monitoring it very closely, and any areas of concern are raised with the post office management immediately, so that we can address it and not have it impact too negatively on our citizens and our clients that use the post office. Just in terms of the question around the 67,000 people that were reported by the AG as having received the relief grant when they were not entitled to, we did, and I think we need to understand that the AG had said in their report that these potentially could have been paid a grant that they were not entitled to. We went through a process of validating all of those again against the information we had, and we've confirmed that there are 31,929 people that received the grant to the value of just over 11 million rand that should not have received that. We are embarking on a process to contact those people to see whether they will repay the money, but it is a lengthy process, and we've got to get confirmation that they did in fact receive it, and they would confirm that they did not qualify for the grant before we were able to raise a debt. But we are working on that with our finance section as well as with the Department of Social Development to make sure that we are able to recover money where it is possible. And while I'm speaking about the recovery of the money, there was a question around the overpayments that took place on the social grants in May of last year. I just want to confirm to the honourable members that all of that money was recovered. There was no loss whatsoever to the state. We managed to reverse the overpayments in most instances, and those where the clients had received the double payment, they did pay back the money that they'd received in advance, either by not drawing the grant in the next month or by actually physically repaying the money to us. So there was no loss to the state on that one. On the findings that the AG-SA had reported on the social relief distribution and the food parcels, there was a small number of cases where the food parcels did not contain all of the items that we had paid for. All of those were taken up with the service providers, and those food parcels were replaced, or the items were provided so that the clients did in fact get everything that they were entitled to. Then just lastly, very quickly on the disability grant applications, and I share the concern that was raised by the Honourable Chairperson around the fact that that did a lot of damage to us, to our reputation, the temporary disability grant project, which happened at the beginning of this year. However, there are a number of improvements that we have put in place since then to make it so that it will not happen again. Firstly, we are now lapsing temporary disability grants on a monthly basis so that the numbers are very much smaller and much more manageable, so that we do not see those very long queues again. We also have developed an online booking system for medical assessments, which has been piloted in the Western Cape and is in the process of being rolled out to the rest of the country. This will enable disability grant applicants, whether they're coming to reapply or a new application, to make the booking for the disability medical assessment online and not have to come into the office just to make an appointment for an assessment. They can then return to the office once the assessment has been done. The online booking system also then provides them with information on what documents that they need to bring when they do return to the office. So hopefully the disability grant application can then be done in one visit rather than 3 or 4 visits, which was the case when we started with this project in January. Thank you very much, members and CEO.
Thank you very much, Chair. That brings us to the end of our responses. I hope that we were able to respond on everything. What we will share with honorable members is the number of social workers employed in each province during the last financial year. And I think we may have covered everything else apart from that. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Minister and Deputy Minister.
Thank you, DG. Minister and Deputy Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to ask the DM to make some comments because she's been here much longer than I am. If there's areas where she needs to respond, and then I'll close after her.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister. Thank you to the members and Team GSG. I just want to talk to 2 things. Just to add, members talked about the adoption services and the government and us in ensuring that social workers in government does adoptions. I just wanted to say, members, indeed, it is intended to improve the adoption services. For an example, I said 3 years, but in private practice, social workers charge up to 300,000 for a child to be adopted. And with the high levels of trafficking in children, it's also becoming a very fine line between the adoption and the child. And hence the decision was taken to make sure that government-based social workers will be able to do adoptions without charging adoptive parents that high amount of money. And also to ensure the very issue that the honorable member raised, children are not stuck in the system just because those that want to adopt them cannot afford to pay an adoption fee. But what we've also done under adoptions to bring to the members was also to ensure that we improve the register of adoptions as well as the documentation for children. And allocating social workers to be able to do that has improved the system, and therefore we will be in a position to ensure that children can go through the system much faster. On the second issue that I wanted to talk to was the whole issue around the scholarship and its reduction. I think I just want to bring to the members' attention that part of the challenge that we are experiencing in terms of the absorption of social workers led to us requesting Treasury that we absorb social workers on the money allocated for the scholarship, because what we were experiencing was we're training the social workers and we are unable to actually absorb them in the system. Hence, that particular aspect had to be moved from one area to the other. And the challenge, though, obviously that goes with the tools of trade, but it also highlighted the reality that social development trains social workers, but we're not the only ones that actually need social workers. So the budget cuts has a direct impact on the absorption of social workers, and also a direct impact on our ability as social development, because the whole scale of prevention of social crimes sits with us. So if the budget for police is cut and our budget is cut, it then puts pressure on our ability to actually roll out very successful prevention programs, whether it's about alcohol abuse, misuse, it's about substances, it's about new HIV infections, it's about the care and support, all of the long list of that particular services that comes to prevention gets really affected. So we have to increase our ICT systems and our capabilities so that we can absorb the budget cuts without actually having a negative impact. The biggest impact, Chair, members, you're seeing in Sassa. The honorable member raised the issue around the offices of Sassa moving from one area to the other. I thought it was important for us to just indicate that the sad part about Sassa and the offices are real. My children always like to say, Mommy, the struggle is real. The struggle is real for Sassa and offices and the environment. Access, not in terms of geography alone, but access for persons with disabilities or older persons, because public works have not really internalized the reality of Sassa and the kind of service Sassa is providing. And hence you see the office that was accessible being moved in Postmansberg to somewhere else that is not accessible. Is that the internalization of the service that Sassa provide has not really happened, and it seems to be misaligned from time to time, and that is beginning to become a bit of a challenge where our beneficiaries spend more money on transport to try and reach the service, whilst actually by the time they get there, the money that they had to use for food has already disappeared. The other budget cuts, members, that we want is that in the social relief of distress allocation, it's important for members to just note that under that, it's not only the food parcels, or it's also the school uniforms for poor children. And this has a direct impact on the program of stopping bullying, because our inability to provide uniforms for poor children as part of the social relief of distress to enable them to learn and not be bullied is also affected by the budget cuts. And that is one of the programs that Sassa also rolls out under the social relief of distress. So I thought I must just highlight some of our realities and our challenges, Chairperson, so that the committee can bear with us. Concurrent functions remains a very big challenge for us. And I think as the National Council of Provinces, we take note of that, because half of the time provinces would say it's an unfunded mandate. And with all of the budget cuts, the unfunded mandates are now becoming a real struggle. And our concurrent function are beginning to be affected, because when we say ECDs need to meet a particular minimum norms and standards, then you find that that province would comply and that one would just choose to ignore us. And the enforcement of ensuring that on an ongoing basis, social development runs, the customer satisfaction surveys also gets affected, because then we are unable from on real time, whether it's NDA, whether it's Sassa, whether it's us, the mother body, whether it's the Central Drug Authority, whether it's the Social Work Council, we end up being unable to actually achieve that which we need to achieve, because everywhere we move and everything that we do, unlike other departments, we can only work from home up to a particular time. We can only digitalize up to a particular point. A lot of these things requires us physically, by body, there. So I thought that the committee should note that. Thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members, Minister, and Team DSD.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not sure if I have the floor.
You can continue, Minister.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I firstly would like to thank the DM for the comments that she has just made, and thank the entire DSD portfolio for the presentations that have been made. and also indicate to the portfolio committee, to the select committee that this is a journey that we really have to up the stake in as far as our services to the people that we are responsible for and the mandates that we have. And therefore, the questions that are being asked by the members are really hit to the heart of the challenges that we are facing. And I have said to the department overall and the ministry overall, we need to try our best to be as creative, as innovative, and as connected as possible, so that the budget cuts, for instance, that have befallen us, I would say befallen us, but we understand we're not the only department that has had to go through this, and they are quite sizable and they are long, because it's not just this year, it's even then the following year and the following financial year. And therefore, when we speak about the DG, the acting DG, particularly speaking to the issues of ensuring that we look at the savings, we actually must search for the savings. We look at ensuring that there is no under expenditure, because we will not be forgiven, for instance, if we know there are budget cuts and then at the end of the financial year, we come back here, or the beginning of the next financial year, we come back and tell you that, by the way, we had to return this amount of money to Treasury. For me, I think that would be completely that would be unacceptable. At the same time, while we're going to be looking at the savings and that, we also have to look at the over expenditure, so that when all is said and done, the value of the money that we are talking about here, yourselves as members in your different provinces, when people talk about Sassa, people talk about NDA, people talk about the Department of Social Development, you can see the impact of the budget. And so I'm also saying to the department, there's very little you can do to change the fact that the budget cuts are here, but there's everything that you can do to see how can you make do with what you have. And so for me, the important thing is about a properly coordinated effort of our work, hence our being a portfolio and making sure that we work with each other. We don't want Sassa to be going that way, NDA going that way, and the department and its different programs going a different way, because it's in there that you will find that we can be able to make some changes and also identify the programs that will have the high impact on our communities. One of the things that I think is very important for me is the reducing duplications and getting rid of duplications in terms of our programs at national, provincial, and local level. Hence, the insistence, for instance, by the president of the district development model and how we can be able to utilize and use that. Talking about the district development model then brings me to the very reason why you have social development and the fact that social development is about the well-being of individuals and about the well-being of our communities and society. Our task as a department is to make sure that we create a conducive environment for our people, is to make sure that we remove barriers if there are any barriers. And we cannot do that on our own without properly connecting to other services of government. So when government is talking about the capacity of the state to deliver, it means capacity of the state across the board and overall. Because issues of children, for instance, we launched the Child Protection Week, and we are saying that it's not only just about the week, it's about the 365 days that we have to be looking out for the children. And my view is that, and I think it's the view of everybody in the department, is that it's not just about the department, it is about everyone else within government that has to support us as a department. When you talk about children, you talk about health, you talk about education, you talk about housing, you talk about transport, you talk about all those things. So the integrated approach that I'm thinking of from a point of view of the work that we are doing is not to isolate ourselves from the overall work, but of course, stick to the mandate that has been given to us without losing sight. We mustn't lose sight of our mandate. But however, it's time the entire government and the entire South Africa realized that a Department of Social Development with its portfolio, NDA and Sassa, without the support of others and ensuring that infrastructure is proper and making sure that the potential of our people, they reach the potential. They will not reach the potential only on the basis of what the Department of Social Development in its portfolio has to deliver. They will reach their potential if we look at programs from cradle to grave, even before cradle, if I can say so that people are empowered. And then the other thing, which I think is of major importance to me, is that we have the year 2021, 2022. We need to focus on the areas which we think are going to have the high impact. There's no way that we think we're going to be able to do everything. And then when we are asked at the end of the financial year, what did we do? We talk about a whole lot of things. And then when we look at the impact of the work that we have done, we can hardly see that. You can see, for instance, when we talk about NPOs and NGOs and the ones that we are supporting, if it is said we're spending 7-point-something billion per year, and that money goes to the provinces, my department, myself, and the DM cannot say, well, we send the money to the provinces, actually we'll see what the provinces do. It has to be our responsibility to follow, track, and trace the money that we have sent there to see the impact of that money. What is happening to the elderly, where they live, the money that's being spent on them, do we see the value for that money? When it comes to Sassa and the challenges that we are facing right now, for instance, the CEO was speaking to the issues of the post office and the problems that are faced by our people, the queues and all that. I don't want to come back again next year and be repeating the same thing and not saying, you know what, we held the bull by its horn. We had a meeting with the Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. We are now reporting back to the president because, by the way, there was a report that we used to send to the president every week or every month or something of that sort. And then COVID happened and then certain things didn't go right. We cannot afford to be coming back with the same things over and over again. And I think that we need to bite the bullet as a department in terms of some of the things that depend on others. I mean, the DM speaks about the issue of property management and where the Sassa offices are, how far they are from the people and all that. The mandate is with us and the mandate is with me. And I've had a discussion actually with the CEO about this matter. And I've said, whatever decisions we took in the past that are not making it easy for you as a Sassa CEO and your management to make sure that you are managing this properly, let's go back and look into it and see what needs to be changed, because I cannot afford to be sitting here and saying, no, so-and-so signed at some particular point that this is how it happens, and yet the change is not happening. And then with regard to the issue of the basic income grant, I'm not sure, I think maybe the DG or somebody did talk to it. This issue for us is a do or die issue. It's a do or die because even the presentations and research that has been done with regard to lessons learned from COVID-19 and the impact of the 350 in as far as at least getting the families to have something in their hand because they've lost their jobs and all. We have a gap there that we need to look at, and the basic income grant is a vehicle, and we've gone quite far in terms of the discussions and what needs to be done and what must be done where. It's one of the things that I think that you'll have to look out for us, because we are continuing with the discussion. We're not going to lose sight of the conversation. This is a battle we want to win, and we're not winning it for ourselves. We're winning it for the people that members are talking about here, where there's poverty, there's unemployment, worst of all, there's hunger, and that hunger can be dealt with by making sure that our people are assisted. And lastly, we're not only looking from a point of view of us being supposedly consumption department. We also very much want to look at empowering our people through the different programs that government has, whether it's the EPWP or it's other programs that are being done by the private sector. We want to partner with people, because when all is said and done, if we say we need to help our people so that they can reach their full potential, it's about opening up opportunities, but being the ones that also help create those opportunities. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me take the opportunity to thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, Acting DG, and your whole team for the way that you answered the questions, and also for the way in which you conduct your work in this very, very important ministry and departments. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the members of the Select Committee. I know that in the beginning we had some hiccups with the meeting, but thank you for everyone for signing in. And then also to our support staff, thank you very much. Minister, looking forward to this week, which is the Child Protection Week. I want to agree with you. It is something that we must do 365 days per year. But I am very, very glad that we are putting this week in front of us to show that we care for our children in this country. Without any further ado, I would like to thank you for the participation, and looking forward as the chairperson of this committee and the members of this committee for always being available when we need you, the Deputy Minister, or from your officials in the different provinces. We are giving you the assurance that we will work with you to make sure that we make a difference in the life of our ordinary people. Thank you very much. And I would ask the Minister, the DM, and the department, if you can excuse us now, because we must continue with our business. But thank you very much,
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you. Can you take us through this program for the next term? Is this our first term that we're in now?
Afternoon, Chairperson, and afternoon, once again. We're currently in the second term, Chair. This was the program that was approved. We are adopting the program today. Unfortunately, this is our first meeting. As you can see from the program before you, a couple of meetings before this was postponed due to NCLP program changes. And then the 18th of May, the DSD was unavailable. Unfortunately, they had audit meetings with the auditor in Pretoria. And then we scheduled for today. So this is our first meeting for the term. And then next week, we will be doing the briefing by the Department of Women on the same annual performance plan and budget vote. And then we're hoping to adopt 2 of those budget votes, Chair. That is the end of the program for this term.
Thank you, Marcel. Members, can I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of this program?
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the program.
Thank you, Member Maleka. Can I have a seconder, please?
Chairperson, I will second. It's Christians.
Thank you, Member Christians. Members, I just want to give you the assurance once again that the confusion on today's program was beyond my control. As you can
Yes,
also, as you can see on this program that we are adopting, how many times we had to postpone our meetings. Now, our meeting was supposed to happen this morning, and before the adoption of our program for this term, we were asked by the chair of chairs that we can, if we can't move our program now for today to 2 o'clock. So I don't know, it was not only our committee, but also 2 other committees, but I'm glad that the chief would then ask our members to excuse themselves from plenary to attend this meeting. So thank you for your indulgence on that this afternoon, members. Anything else, any member that want to make a comment before we close?
No.
Your apology is accepted, and we're all here to make sure that things do happen. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Member Bacha. Tongeni?
Thank you, Chairperson. Your apology has been accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see each other in plenary again.
Okay, my dear.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yes, yeah. Oh, see you tomorrow morning.
All right,
Bye,
dear.
Chair.
Bye,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay.